Okay, so we are going to practice our AND and OR circuit. Okay, so so the first chip is the 7408, right? So it's written really tiny on it, so I won't be able to show with the camera here. They're really hard to see even with your eyes, right? So make sure you get the right one. But it makes no difference actually, because the pins are the same if you go the AND or the OR gate. Okay, so this one here is the 32, right? So this is a quad OR gate, right? So there's 4 OR gates on it, right? So you just look for the pins. Remember how to identify pin 1, right? Do you remember how to identify it? So there's a dot on top of pin 1, and there's a notch on the side here. Okay, so that tells me pin 1 is here. That's 7, that's 14. That's important because you need to power that chip, right? So it's standard across the board. Pin 7 is the ground. Pin 14 is your plus 5. So that's standard. Okay? And most chips are like that, by the way, even a CPU, guys, right? So, like, I don't fool around enough with CPUs, but, like, I'm sure in the Intel families, for example, right, like, there's, like, 300 pins, right, on those chips, right, if you know, right? Maybe 100, right? And it must be the same idea, right? Like, each time it's the same one, that's the plus, and there's always the same, that's the negative. Got it? Okay, so that's like, it's across the board. Okay, so you make sure your pins are clean and straight. Now, so this one, so even if you have one that the pin is broken, it's not the end of the world as long as it's not pin 14 or 7. Makes sense because you need the power, right? So if either pin 14 or 7 is broken, that chip is useless. You chuck it in the garbage, okay? So be careful. I know why these broke. It's because the kids, when they pulled the chip out of the breadboard, they thought it would be okay to bend the legs. And then if you do that 3 times, guess what happens to the pins? Like, those are fragile, right? Okay, so they're not like your remotes on like your whatever. Okay, so you got to pay attention to those devices. Okay, so you'll need one of those 2 chips. It's great if you have both ready. You need obviously your 9-volt clip and a battery, but that you plug at the end. So I'm going to put it away so we don't get tempted. You need your 7805. So it's written on it. So that's a voltage regulator. So the last 2 numbers tell you the voltage that it will give out, right? So that's the 7805. So that's a 5 volt, right? You could get a 7812 that would regulate for 12 volts. You could even get negative voltages. So those are the 79s. Right? So 7905 would be a negative 5 volt if you wanted that. You would need to start with a negative, which in our case we don't. Okay, so you need one of those. You need one resistor around 100 ohm. Okay, 100 ohm works great, 200 is fine, but do not take a 12 ohm, for example. So it needs to be in the neighborhood of 100. So how do I know that I have 100 here? Well, it ends in the stripe brown. Right? It ends in brown, right? So it tells me it's in the hundreds. Okay, so you need one of those. You then need 2 resistors of high values. That value varies. It's not important to have it right on. As long as they're higher than 1K, it's great, but it's better around 10K. You can go even higher, like to hundreds of Ks. So it ends in orange. In yellow, my apologies. So these 2 end in yellow. They don't even need to be the same. It's not important. Okay, but so anyway, this is either hundreds of Ks, hundreds of Ks or tens of Ks. It doesn't matter as long as you get close to that. These have to be high. So those are going to be your pull down resistors. You need 2 push buttons, right? Some of you have the longer ones that have a red tip. That works. And you need an LED. I have yellow here, so I'll go with yellow, and you need a couple of wires. Easy enough? Sorry. Okay, so let's get started. So you plunk your TTL chip somewhere in the middle. It's not important where. You could do it like at the edge, but it's just not great. Okay, so if you don't mind, I'll zoom in now, starting here. Okay. And then auto focus. Okay, so this is my chip. Push it down nice and tight. Don't bend the legs on those, right? So they're made to straddle the rift in the middle, right? They're made to straddle that. Okay, so it doesn't matter the chip, the 32 or the 08, doesn't matter. Just make sure before you plunk it down, look at the pins. Are they facing straight down, right? Some of them might be bent, in, out, sideways. You use your fingers and then you straighten them out, right? So I did that already, right? So please help yourself when you're going to remove it, right? The right way is you use a pencil, you just slide it under, and then it literally pops out, right? And you don't get any legs bent, right? It's really easy. But if you do it with your fingers, you're going to go like side motion, and then it's going to bend the last legs in. Does that make sense? Right? So you try to avoid that. Okay, so you plunk that in. Okay. Right, so now because I'm recording this, I can't really show it's just the way it is. Right, so the circuit is on the blog, okay? We have it on the board right now. Okay, so let's let's maybe start with what's easier. Let's wire let's wire the power, right? How about that, right? So you need your 7805, okay? I am not going to cheat this time because it's kind of not that it's advanced, but right, like we'll go the normal way, okay? Not the way that I would do, because otherwise it might get people confused, right? So trying to save space is not the goal now. Okay, so you need your power, right? So your out pin is here, right? Pin 3, right? So this is the front, right? Right, notice, right? So the metal tab goes at the back like that. Hey, does someone know why it has this hole like this and a metal tab like that? Can someone guess why it's got that? Look on the back. Why would it have that? Anyone? Can anyone guess that? That's an important feature, by the way. Very important feature. Can someone guess? So those can dish out up to 1 amp regulated. So 5 volt at the output, but 1 amp, right? Do you think that gets hot if it's dishing out 1 amp at 5 volts? This thing, if you make it work this hard, this thing becomes, it's burning hot, like literally burning hot. If you leave it like that, the chip has thermal protection. It will literally shut down, right? So why do you think it's got this here? So you put it on a heat sink. Have you heard of that? So a heat sink, all it is, it's a chunk of aluminum, right? And it's got metal fins, like it's like on your CPUs, right? It's the same idea, right? And so you bolt it onto the heat sink so that it can dissipate its heat into the heat sink. Make sense? Right? So this is what that's for. Okay? Okay. Okay, so we got right? So this pin here, pin 3, right? So pin 1, that's your in, right? So you can enter your 9 volt. That's your ground, right? Middle pin is ground, and the out is pin 3, right? So we need the VCC 5 volt on pin 14, right? So here, so how about we wire pin 3 to VCC here, right? Right. So now I got my plus. Easy enough. Okay. Now let's power the ground. Ground is which pin on my chip? Yep. 7. So I go ground, which is pin 2 on my 7805. And I go to my ground. So I'll go to the edge here so it's not in my way. It's okay to bend the wires, right, so that they're flat, right? That's fine. It's a good practice, right? It helps your circuit to get cleaner. Okay, so now our chip is powered, right? Now we're just missing the battery, right? But we're going to plunk the battery last. Okay, what's next? So let's look at our circuit. So now I need on the output, I need my LED, right? If you look at the circuit, right, of one of the gates. Okay, so I'm going to take my low value resistor, 100 ohm in my case. Now, if you look at so I just wrote it quickly earlier, right? I just drew that, right? So this is one example, right? If you look on the website, on any website for the pinout, for the 7408, for example, you'll see that pin 1 and 2 are 2 ins, and pin 3 is an out. But I could have used pin 4, 5 as in, and 6 as out. And then I just didn't draw them, but there's 2 more here, right? It's a quad AND gate, your chip. Does that make sense? There's 4 gates on it. Okay, so you could have used gate 4, 3, 2, or 1. Makes no difference. I'm going to use gate 1, okay, just because, whatever. It's easier, right? So pin 1 and 2, right? Pin 1 and 2 are my ins. Are you getting this? Right? It's really simple, okay? So, and my 3 is my out, right? So what do I need to do on my out? I need to go resistor, diode, facing to the ground, and then ground, right? You see the drawing? It's on the blog, okay, if you're listening to this. Okay, so it's to the ground, right? So I'll take my resistor. Okay, so a pet peeve of mine, guys, is this one I've already improved. You guys, you plunk your components funny, and then the legs get all bent out of shape. It's horrible. And then we get resistors that break at the edge here because they've been bent so many times. Okay, can you, it doesn't need to get all twinkled and like it's all funky here. Okay, so you take your nail and you bent it back into shape. Okay, so just pay attention. Like, you don't need to destroy those legs. The point is not to destroy that. Okay, and the only thing when you get a brand new resistor that you need to do, you take it by the body, right? You take the resistor and then you just bend. Like, that's all you need to do, right? Like, the reason why they get bent out of shape is because you guys are holding them too high, and then you try to plunk that into a hole, and then the wire goes like, it just bends, right? So you hold it lower to the leg, right? And then you push it down straight. Why try to like, it's not because it can bend that you should bend it. Does that make sense? Right? Okay, so you take your resistor, and we need to go to ground, right? So there's a couple of ways to do this. So I'll do it this way here. So you see I'm plunking it in pin 3, and I'll pin on the outside of the chip here, right? So this is pin 3 here. This is on the outside. Okay, so I'll just go this way. And see, the minute they start bending, now